All right, welcome back to Koinos Talk, everyone. My name is Kui with my co-host here, Luke Willis, and today we'll be joining us with three engineers from Koinos Group. We have here Steve Garbino, CTO of Koinos Group, Nathaniel Cadwell in the middle, and Michael Vandenberg. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, good. Thanks for
welcome in. We
Very
are glad
good
to have you. All right. So just getting started. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We got a action-packed show today. Excited to have these folks on. So Kui, why don't you kick us off with first question, and we'll just start jumping right in.
Yeah, so I think we like to start the show with just a brief little introduction about yourself. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourself, a little brief history about your background, and I'll let you guys just kind of share what you want to share. Steve, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure, I'll start. I was developing software kind of since I was a little kid, around 10 or whatever. I started out professionally at a web development company during college, mostly working on Drupal content management system. After that, I worked at a kind of a big trading company called OpenLink Financial, and that was, it was a large corporation. It did a lot of oil trading. A lot of modeling, that kind of stuff. Worked with some big companies there, Shell, Gazprom, all kind of globally. And, I kind of worked my way through the ranks there. And I got an opportunity in LinkedIn to work in cryptocurrency, which I was really interested in. So that's how I ended up interviewing at Steemit. Funny, I actually was interviewed by Michael at Steemit, and so it was like a no-brainer for me to get out of corporate America, get into crypto startups, and get into that. And so I did that for a few years, and yada yada, the whole thing, Justin's son, blah blah blah, and here we are today, Koinos Group. That's the gist of it. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Nathaniel, how about you?
Yeah, so actually, I come from a science background. I went to college for physics, and then I kind of fell into computational physics. Bounced around, my career from that to biometrics to DNA forensics, and at some point I started, like in around 2012, I started hearing about this blockchain thing, and I started looking into it, set up a Litecoin miner and played around with it. But I was still working in forensics at the time. But, eventually I had an opportunity to join Steemit, and I took it, and the rest is history.
Very cool. Michael?
I was originally right after college going to do grad school. Actually did a little bit of grad school for a year for computer science, and didn't love it because it was all reading papers and not doing. And so I decided to drop out of grad school to pursue actual engineering position. And where I was at in Blacksburg, Virginia,
a little company called Cryptonomics was hiring, which was Dan Larimer's company that built BitShares 2.0. And so when I was looking for jobs, I saw that. I'm like, blockchains, Bitcoin's big, a lot bigger now than it used to be. I think I'll give it a shot. I even remember in that thought process. So for those of you that don't know, Luke and I went to college together. And I remember sitting in our computer science lab trying to figure out Bitcoin with you. And just completely, neither of us were like really getting it at all.
Right.
But I remember like thinking back on that moment and being like, well, I don't really understand it, but it's gotten bigger and bigger. So like, I want to get into an industry that is still growing, that's new. So I applied for the job and got it. And within a month of me starting that position, we came up with the idea for what would become Steemit. And so, Steem. And so we created a new company. I was just kind of along for the ride as the low guy on the totem pole, but got to help Dan Larimer build Steem, and then kind of was able to work my way up. I mean, it was a small team, but when he left Steemit to work on EOS, I was able to take a more prominent role at Steemit and in the design of Steem, and help develop some scaling technologies such as AppBase and Mira. Like Steve said, along the way, I got to hire him, which I still look back on those almost 4 years, and I think that was one of the best decisions I ever made. It led to a great friendship and business partner. And like Steve said, about 3 years ago, Justin Sun, Steemit Drama, and Koinos is the sort of the culmination of lessons learned for over those last 4 years. Nathan worked at Steemit for a little while too. So when we were trying to figure out what our founders would be, what our core team would be, it was a real natural next step to reach out, sort of in a way, kind of get the band back together. Some people that were still at Steemit, and some people to return. That's where we get Koinos from. So.
Very cool. Kui, your mic, man. We got to get this fixed. We got some great questions in the chat. I do want to get to those, but before we do, can y'all give just like a brief overview of like how you landed on building Koinos? Because obviously, like the drama with Justin Sun and Steem and deciding to build Koinos, there's some gap there in the history, at least in my understanding of what you explored working on. I believe you were thinking of building dApps and then just decided that there weren't any layer ones that really fit your need. But yeah, I'd love to get a little bit more color around that. I don't know who wants to take that, but
Steve, I'll jump in and you can fill in some more. So towards the end of our time at Steemit, Andrew actually had started working on a sort of a dApp L2 originally that was going to be built on top of Steem. I think he already was seeing the writing on the wall with Steemit, maybe not necessarily, I think, before the rest of us, but he was the first one to start doing something about it. So he and Ron that's when he and Ron got together and started working on a project that they were calling Open Orchard, which was essentially a dApp layer 2. Wasn't necessarily a dApp itself, but the idea was at that point, he had recognized what was working well on Steem, what wasn't, and was trying to build a layer 2 to help provide crucial features that dApp developers would need. And so when we all quit Steem, I think we took a couple weeks off just because everything was stressful, but we started having calls and okay, so what were the problems we saw? How would we want to address them? And it wasn't even as much as let's build something, but just if we were to build something, what would it be? And kind of naturally out of that, the Open Orchard was sort of our, I would say like that was the application. We're like, okay, how would we better build a blockchain to support an application like Open Orchard? And originally we were thinking like maybe we could fork other blockchains. And originally we were looking at, well, we like the idea of WASM. ESIO is a big framework. So we're originally like, can we just sort of take ESIO, make some changes that sort of went against, what we've colloquially referred to as the rising sun attack, right? Or the exchange attack. And so we actually, the original Koinos code base before it was even called Koinos was a fork of ESIO that we essentially were like, well, we like this bit, but we need to make optimizations over here. And so we started pulling pieces out. And before long, like we had pulled all of the ESIO pieces out and had built our own thing. But fundamentally at the beginning was, how do we want to have a scalable DApp environment. We want to be able to have better tokenomics to prevent against these exchange shenanigans, which ultimately kind of feel like that's always the only blockchain that really felt resilient to us was Bitcoin. And I guess at the time, Ethereum with proof of work. All these proof of stake chains in their various flavors felt like they potentially suffered from that problem. But we're trying to see in the future, and Ethereum's moving away from proof of work. Bitcoin's getting a bunch of flack for costing too much electricity. So proof of burn kind of was a natural solution to that, and sort of all the pieces just started coming together out of this desire to build this Open Orchard L2. And sort of as we got more and more features, we're like, hey, this layer one is really cool. And the way in which we had early on made the decision, well, we really would like to make this upgradable in band. Hard forks were a pain point of Steam all the time. So how can we mitigate that? Essentially knowing that whatever we launch is not going to be perfect. It needs to be upgraded. So all these ideas kind of came together, and before long, we realized we're not actually building an L1. We're building a blockchain framework on which we'll build our L1. And so that's, I think, when the business sort of shifted. And I would say it was fairly early on, probably within the first 6 months. It just kind of naturally came about. That's where we got where we are. Steve, did you have any other details you wanted to add in?
That was pretty comprehensive, I would say. For me personally, I really appreciated the RC system of Steam, and I was a firm believer in general purpose smart contract platforms. So I really wanted to see what can be done by combining those. And I totally wanted to, take the path of least resistance. So I was like, all right, maybe we can just rip all the crap out of EOS and put good stuff there. But like Michael said, eventually, I think everyone wanted to write from scratch. But yeah, all this stuff came naturally over time. It was like every step of the way, we were like, how can we mitigate future problems by developing flexible solutions now, like each step of the way. It was really an iterative process that eventually resulted in Koinos.
Very cool. Nathaniel, looked like maybe you had a thought there on whether you wanted to build from scratch.
Oh, no, I definitely did.
Okay, all right.
Definitely did. I think one of the cool things that that came about when we were sort of iteratively designing, though, was breaking it into microservices too. I really like that aspect of it and how we designed that. So that was really cool to me.
Yeah,
making sure to keep it compartmentalized.
Absolutely.
That's pretty comprehensive. So
During the development of Koinos, did you guys feel like there were things that early on were items that you didn't want to compromise on, and you found that you did compromise later on, or vice versa? Because it seems like there's so many elements to pulling apart EOS that you'd eventually found out that say, hey, here are items that we cannot really move away from, such as the exchange attack that was experienced on Steam. You'd want to prevent that no matter what. So were there any other items that you maybe along the way thought were things that you couldn't compromise on, and then you eventually did, or vice versa?
So I don't think I would say we compromised on anything. I think some of our ideas early on were not fully baked, and so originally we were thinking of, for example, originally we're like, NFTs are super hot. Is there any way we can combine NFTs into the block production? Just to, because it's, everyone wants NFTs. And so originally, actually, the instead of the VHP where we're going to have minor NFTs that had the hash power on it. And so you were going to burn, and then it would create an NFT, and you would train that NFT around like it was hardware. But essentially, when we got around to wanting to spec out proof of burn, we were like, man, this is getting really complicated. Is this over engineered? And so we're like, we really actually don't need it. A token handles this well enough. Why can't it be a token? So there was a few, I would say, that as we had an idea early on, trying to make something maybe a little bit more grandiose than it needed to be. And then the end result was it was over engineered. And so when we got to the point where we were actually developing it, we recognized that. And I don't say none of us are upset or regretful that proof of burn doesn't involve NFTs. I think the VHP system works really, really well. We're all happy with where it's at. So I wouldn't say there were compromises. It's just part of the iterative development process. I think, really, we simplified a lot of stuff as we developed Koinos. And ultimately, I think the product is better for it, that we don't have weird buzzword cruft that I think a lot of projects sometimes have.
Sure.
Yeah, I would add too to this. We didn't have to compromise because we had a lot of we had no shortage of ideas to put into Koinos. And so what we really realized early was how important upgradability was. So if we could defer committing to all these different things we wanted to do, but have an easy upgrade path to get there later, that was the compromise. And so our kind of mantra is to leave the door open. Always keep the be able to pivot, keep the opportunity there, try not to close any doors. And a lot of that is solved by having that in-band upgrade. So that makes us all feel comfortable that all the ideas of things that we could do to improve it, we're still there. It's still there. It's available for us to move forward into post-mainnet launch.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Yeah, we were astoundingly uncompromising, actually, in what we built. We built the product that we built our vision.
That's awesome. I think that segues really well into a question in the chat from John Doe. How do you guys resolve conflicting views on things? You seem to manage that process very well. How so? And I think this is when you're uncompromising as an engineer, at least in my experience, there tends to be conflict with the business side, which in this case I guess would be Andrew and Ron. So just curious, either between yourselves or just within the group of five, how did you guys manage conflict through the last 2 years?
I mean, not paying ourselves, I think, is a real big part of that. Right. All joking aside, setting internal deadlines and I don't think when we started, none of us, I think we all thought we would be done in like a year total, and like that was just completely off. But having internal deadlines specifically, once we kind of like testnet 3 onward, we were really, really strict with ourselves. And that is like, okay, is this going to result in a delay? Is this, how does this impact our timeline? And because of that, I would say like there wasn't a whole lot of disagreement between business and engineering, because like, Andrew and Ron trust us to make the correct engineering decisions, but also we're open with them as to what engineering decisions we're making and why. We're a small team, and so they're open with us on the business side and where we're at. And so it's very much a whole team. Okay, this is where we're at as a business. Is this feature going to help us get to mainnet faster? Will it not? Is it actually going to delay us? And we're constantly running through that calculus. And so as a team, I think even if we have sometimes some ideological differences, like we're able to come to consensus as a team on what's practical and what's not. I mean, we've had some heated arguments at times. Maybe not arguments, but debates on different features and ways of doing things. But at the end of the day, we all have a lot of respect for each other, and no one's ever fought dirty. It's always here's the objective facts, and we can't argue with objective truth, and so we engineer around our requirements and make things work.
Cool.
Let's that kind of segues into another question here during that development process. Another John Doe here ask, what was the highlight during the last 2 years? What have you learned along the way, and what was the biggest surprise during the development process?
I'm gonna let someone else go first.
What was that?
I'm gonna let someone else go first.
Okay. Steve, Nathan?
The business side is difficult. Definitely. There was highlights are maybe easier. When we first wrote smart contracts, tested it on our single node. We do agile, we do like demos every 2 weeks. And when we were first able to write a smart contract, put it in a block, watch it manipulate state, I think that was like a spark, a highlight for me personally. I was like, oh, this is work. This is going to work. That was a big deal. So what's surprising to me, the business aspect is pretty difficult. Startups, a lot of it is team cohesion. It's more personnel than anything else, I feel like, determining success. And I think that's a testament to my colleagues. Like, we work really well as a team, and I feel like that's one of the most difficult aspects of a startup. That's something I learned personally.
Cool.
So yeah, if you can overcome that, work really well together, that's a requirement. There's no getting around that.
Not a simple undertaking.
No, not at all. You get better at it over time,
It definitely did help that you guys all worked together at Steam. I mean, how long were you guys all concurrently working together? back in on Steemit days?
Well, I'm the newest one out of all of us, so I think I was there for maybe 3 years working with Michael and Andrew. So
Cool.
that's it.
I was saying, I think Steve, you were hired. Let me think. So we all quit early 2020. So that means the fall of 2018 is when all the Steemit layoffs happened. You were hired a few months before that. So yeah, you were hired late July of 2018. So we worked at Steemit for a year and a half. Concurrently, unfortunately, Nathan was a part of those giant layoffs. So concurrently, I think we only were working together for like 3 months, maybe. The three of us with Andrew, but I had worked with Nathan for about a year. I worked with Steve for a year and a half, and so yeah, the concurrent time was not as much, but the overall time I think was enough.
Good. Yeah, enough to build trust, which is what's important.
Enough to know. I know the quality of the work these guys are going to create. I know we have team chemistry. Even if we disagree, like we can build this thing. So
cool. So there's a few different. There's one comment that I do want to get to, but let's actually jump ahead, Kui. I want to talk a little bit about security. This is a question comes up a lot. Kui, why don't you take it?
Yeah, this question's been coming up a lot, and I didn't feel like we don't generally have answers to this question just because it's software, right? Things are difficult in software, but people have been wondering, how can they trust the code to function the way it should function? How can they trust that when they claim their tokens on mainnet, whenever it gets released, that their tokens will be saved and the blockchain itself will be secured? How do you generally try to answer that question to people who are not technically savvy and able to verify things themselves?
Do you want me to take it, or do you want to take this one?
I'm curious what your answer is going to be.
I'm curious what your answer is going to be. Okay, well, let's both do it. I'll say that we take security seriously, very seriously, and the same way we build confidence is the same way you should. Extensive unit tests. Extensive integration tests. Also, one of the cool features that I think Michael added was the state Merkle roots. Ensure that all nodes are agreeing at all times. That gives me confidence. And at the end of the day, you're putting your trust in the cryptography. This is not. We didn't write the cryptography. We're using well-tested, well-known cryptographic primitives, right? So at the end of the day, you have that baseline to build on. After that, the smart contracts are not that large, easily auditable. And so if you're an outsider looking to build confidence in Koinos, well, if you can read code, I encourage you to read the smart contracts, look at the integration tests, look at the unit tests. That's how we build confidence ourselves about it.
Yeah. And I'll add that, when we write a feature, like the system contracts we've been writing, we could get the core of the contract written in a day or two, and then often writing the tests to exercise it and make sure it's all secure. It'll take like a week, like it takes longer to exercise it and make sure that we're confident in it than it actually does to implement it.
Cool.
So we really put things through their paces.
Yep. So I think my answer, like you guys all said stuff I agree with, I'm going to go with the softer technical, like the non-technical answer. I started by saying, yes, all of our code is open source. So we're not trying to hide anything, and even if a user is not technical, there are technical people that can read the code and understand it. And so either you're going to have a whole bunch of people in on the scam, or it's legit. Likewise, I think that one of the best things we have going for us is the way we launched the coin token, and the transparency we've had over the course of development. I've said in Telegram before, and I'll keep saying it. If we're con artists, we're the dumbest con artists out there, because we didn't ICO, we didn't IEO, right? The Koinos group was given no tokens. We acquired tokens via the exact same methods that everybody else acquired tokens. So to summarize, we spent money to acquire our own token. In the world of crypto, that's idiocracy. Why in the world would you do that, right? We also spent 2 years building this thing. I don't recommend people pay much attention to this, but I was scrolling through the coin market cap comments on the coin token over the last 48 hours, specifically after the snapshot, and people like, oh, it's a scam. I told you there's nothing here. I'm like, why would we wait 2 years to rug pull now, after never really pumping the price? Like, it's just like, if we're pulling some sort of scam, like, we're just doing it horribly. Like, you can't argue that. We're not clever about scamming people out of their money.
Yeah.
And we would have done it much faster, sooner. We would have put marketing money towards pumping the price of the token for no gain. And then, we've launched 4 successive test nets that have incrementally improved to the point where we've gotten to where we're at. We have like a half a dozen or more community developers actively building smart contracts and tooling on top of things that have found bugs that, you guys have helped us fix. All of these things together, I feel like tell a story of, hopefully, I hope people realize, the story of a company who's trying to do the right thing in an industry where it's really easy to do the wrong thing. And really financially, you're financially incentivized to do the wrong thing. So, I hope that narrative is something that sticks with people and ultimately does help their ability to trust the code that we've written. And while we may not have the security audits right now, everything is still open. The cryptography is open, the blockchain will be open. Even if there's something right now, it's all auditable. So, there's no sense in even trying to hide something now, because it will come out in the future, right? And so because of that, we're gonna do, we're people, we can make mistakes, and we've tested this code. I have a high degree of confidence in the code we have. There still can be bugs in it. And I think that goes back to what Steve was saying earlier of we want to make sure we have a path for upgrade, right? We write buggy code. We've found a lot of bugs and fixed them. That by no means doesn't mean that we've fixed everything, but we have an upgrade path to fix them. And, we are going to trust our tokens with this software. So, we're going to put our money on the line as a company and personally to use this software. And so we hope by that example, people are also comfortable trusting our software. And, we've been running different versions of the test nets for, what has it been, a year and a half now since the first test net?
Yeah, a year and a half. The version 1 came out summer of
Yeah, end of June. Yeah, 21. So
21. Yeah.
almost a year and a half now. So like we have more time testing our code base than most projects do when they launch. So many crypto projects launch without even having code open sourced yet, and they claim they have a security audit. You can't tell any of that. We've been open source since before our first testnet. Our entire testing has been open. People have been poring over this code and will continue to do so as Koinos gains popularity, and they're not going to find anything. They'll find bugs, but they're not going to find any malicious exploits.
I want to, Steve, you said something that was pretty cool about the fact that you're using security cryptography that's already known to be very well tested. I want to bring that to some of my own experiences to share with the people watching. So I'm a structural engineer, and we primarily use wood, steel, and concrete and stuff like that, right? But we don't actually design the steel. We just use geometric shapes. We make the connections, but we trust that the manufacturers out there are all making steel to a specification that we can all trust will, be there when we order the components. So in a lot of ways, if things do fail, it's rarely ever an issue with the underlying strength of the steel, right?
Kui, your audio. It's been a constant problem. Middle of a thought too. But yeah, I'm not an engineer, so I can't jump in on what Kui was saying here specifically.
How about now? Are you good? I'll make this one quick then. But at the end of the day, if things do fail, it's often not failure of the underlying material, as long as it's built correctly. And it's always something that can be fixed. It's never catastrophic. And so I feel like if the underlying cryptography is well tested and battle hardened, if there are bugs, it's not something that's going to lead to any catastrophic failure, and which is why it's something that's upgradable or repairable in upgradable fashion. Would you say that's kind of fairly true for Koinos?
Yeah, we absolutely were thinking about this kind of stuff, especially like ensure that we can implement quantum resistant algorithms when they become available if necessary. We don't ever want Koinos to be obsolete, and so we were always thinking about what's going to happen down the road and what would we do to compensate for that. So yeah, definitely. But again, when you use something like SHA-256, then Bitcoin is vulnerable, right? And exactly. Look at how tried and true that has been for a decade. So a lot of things have to go wrong for there to be a problem. And yeah. I think also to build on what you were saying, every time you do something brand new and innovative, you have your risks, right? And so if you can avoid reinventing wheels, you're going to build with pieces that have proven track records. So you want to limit your risk factor, essentially. And so by using these tried and true pieces, put them together to build something new, that's how you can mitigate your risk while being innovative. Don't write your own crypto algorithm when there's perfectly good ones available that are battle tested, for example. It's just something you shouldn't do.
To the point where we've taken the Koinos addresses is the Bitcoin address specification, right? Even things like that, we're like, why would we change that? It's a spec. Let's keep the spec, and that way all of the other tooling that exists out there for creating private keys and then outputting an address, okay, it all works with Koinos. Sweet. Which means all of the the seed phrase specifications and things like that will all also work with Koinos, right? When Julian built Condor, he didn't have to reinvent generating a private key with seeds. he used an existing specification with existing software that had already been battle tested, and it just works with Koinos.
Very cool. I do want to highlight one thing that Michael said back a round ago was, all of us here are going to be risking our own capital basically by using the software. So that should build some social trust if you do trust us, which, do it at your own risk. But if you are concerned and you want to see mainnet live for a while before you really jump in, but you hold some tokens from the snapshot, kind of your best course would be to just not claim yet, because that reduces your surface area in terms of like potential attack vectors. So if you're concerned about any of Koinos, like really, if you just don't claim, the only place where people could get at you is if they either take your private key for your Ethereum address, or if there's some serious vulnerability in the actual claim process. So that's a much smaller surface area for attack than if we were talking about claiming and being part of the full blockchain. So
yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That's a really good point. And I want to say along with it, we've not mentioned this, but we are planning when mainnet launches. So one of the things we learned in testnet 4 was I think at one point we had forgotten to update the essentially the times on the governance contract. So proposals were going through at like super speed, and we're like, oh crap, we need to get this uploaded. And so because we could just mint coin, we essentially 51% attacked the testnet to push through governance changes to fix it. That's not something we will have the capability of doing on mainnet. We don't own 50% of the coin. Far from it. And so we can't just do whatever we want. It's a decentralized system. And so we decided, at least for the very beginning, our plan is to upload the system contracts. They will have the authorized overrides in the contracts, but we'll override everything except for the upload contract, just to begin with. And then 30 days after mainnet launches, we'll set those overrides to defer to system authority. The reason for that is not because we're trying to pull anything on anybody, but if there is a critical bug in the very beginning of mainnet, we want to be able to fix it quickly. Essentially relying on the sort of the social contract of this is the intention behind these system contracts, and if the contracts have a bug such that they don't follow the intention or the agreed upon understanding, that can be fixed. But we want that to be as short of time as possible to get everything controlled by governance as quickly as possible. And so we feel 30 days is a fair compromise. It's sort of not ideal, but it is better than the alternative of like a really bad bug, breaking something and then us having to wait the 30-day window for governance to deal with it. Gotcha. And so along with that, I would say even if someone's on the fence, if you want to wait those 30 days, don't claim until after all the contracts have been the authorized overrides are in there fully. The claim contract will always be able to claim you your tokens, and we're going to leave the token claiming claim.koinos.io site up until the claims are done. So there's absolutely no rush to claim, and we've designed the tokenomics to account for that. Everything is based off of the minted supply, and so everything is going to be well behaved even if a small percentage of the coin has been claimed. Very cool.
Just want to reiterate one point there. So for the first 30 days, instead of having the normal 1 week review period, 2 week voting period, 1 week application period, is that what it's called? What are the actual...
So those would be the parameters for the governance contract, which means setting new system contracts, changing system calls is still going to be a part of that. It's just the ability for us to sort of upload a new version of say the resource contract. If there was a bug, maybe I've checked everything, but maybe there's like an integer overflow that I missed, and it's causing the resource contract to have some wonky values. We can just slot a fix in immediately by uploading directly to the contract, and that would allow us to, for the first 30 days, to bypass governance.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't allow us to change the system calls or which contracts are system contracts. Only make fixes directly to the contracts which are already system contracts. And
Gotcha.
then after 30 days, we will set those overrides. And at that point, the keys, the Genesis key and all the keys used to upload those contracts will have absolutely no meaning. Additionally, the call contract and the payment authorize will already be overridden. So we won't be able to use, for example, the coin key to mint a bunch of coin. We won't have that power. We'll only have the power to patch the contract in order to fix a bug.
Gotcha. Okay. So only allowing yourselves to upload new versions of the contract, which granted gives you some control and the ability to scam in the first 30 days if you really were hell-bent on wrecking the value of the coin you've put in all this effort into.
Spend 3 years to ruin it in 30 days.
Right.
Sounds like a great return on investment to me.
Genius.
But yeah, if anybody listening is concerned about that 30-day period, just don't claim. Just wait.
Yeah. There's no rush to claim. And like I said, the tokenomics work well. So even the inflation rate is based on the printed supply. And so if only 10 million coin are claimed in the first year, because a bunch of people are just wanting to sit and see how things go, we will only inflate 2% on that 10 million. So only 200,000 coin will be created in the first year. So you don't have to worry about getting inflated away by not participating. All of the tokenomics are based on that actual minted supply, which does not include the claims. So there's absolutely no rush to claim. I've got friends and family who are less technical that I'm telling hey, don't claim right away. There's no rush to. Just sit on it, and when you want to do something with it, I'll help walk you through that.
Cool.
But there's absolutely no rush. I don't want people to feel oh crap, I got to claim right now. No, you can wait. And if you're nervous, don't claim.
Very cool.
It'll be there waiting for you when you're ready.
Nathaniel, do you have something to add there?
I said claim contract's going to be there forever.
Great.
Gotcha.
All right.
On the topic of claim, do you want to put another question or?
Yeah, which one are we looking at?
Let's see here. Some of these questions actually I'll save for last, but I want to jump into real quick talking about claim. Right, we're claiming on mainnet. There isn't a launch date yet, but after mainnet does launch, what do you guys want to focus on to further enhance the blockchain?
Our focus is going to be on developer friendliness and tooling. We've had already in testnet, we're having a few community members upload snapshots so that people can sync faster. We don't have the capability in chain yet, but StateDB was designed from the beginning for the ability to be able to generate snapshots while the node is running. We still need to improve our client library developer tooling, where I'm really, really glad Julian's built Koilib, but we need client libraries in other languages, continuing to improve our SDKs, having more reliable API endpoints for developers to use, mana delegations to onboard new developers that may not have bought coin early on, or just trying to test out some things, along with having a developer-friendly testnet so that developers can test their dApps in a safe environment. I think our least for me, our big focus is going to be continuing to build the ecosystem, to mature the ecosystem to be as developer friendly, and to work on building partnerships with dApp developers.
Awesome. To that point, we had a question in the chat that I think is relevant. dApps, what do you see in the near future, and what do you think might come later? It's a good question, and I'm, feel free to disagree with me, but I'm assuming that a lot of the things that are on Ethereum and other blockchains are a pretty natural slot in things to build. But what do you see that are like more unique to Koinos, given the design? Any predictions on what people might build?
I think there's a big opportunity for games on Koinos, personally, specifically because of the free-to-use nature of the blockchain. It's going to make a lot of games that were not possible on other chains possible here on Koinos, and I think that end of the ecosystem is going to flourish in an unexpected way. That's what I feel like inside. Also, I personally am a big fan of DeFi, and I think that's going to be big here as well. There's going to be, again, you're cutting out a lot of the financial burden from interacting with a blockchain. It's going to make things more cheap and efficient than anywhere else, and I suspect that will also grow. That's what I think is coming both near and far.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some interesting innovations surrounding delegation. Things that we can't even imagine right now. I think people are going to get pretty clever.
Someone had mentioned before that when people use Steam, a lot of users weren't aware that each time they made a post that they were actually submitting a transaction to the blockchain. And I think that with the way Mana is designed, some people, especially what Steve was pointing out with games and DeFi, it eventually might be that they don't even know that they're using a blockchain because of how abstracted that process is. You no longer have to deal with trying to fundamentally think about how much it costs. The issues revolve around the benefits of submitting a transaction now or later are all going to be removed from people using a blockchain that's zero fee. And in that regard, someone's got a question here. I think it's pretty interesting if you can give your thoughts on it. Any opinions about mana scarcity and its value, and could it be too rare at some point?
I would like to commend you for bringing that up. That actually, what you just brought up is part of where our name comes from. We want Koinos to be ubiquitous, such that normies don't even realize they're using a blockchain. That's how adoption is going to get to the next level. And exactly what you pointed out is how we believe that will happen, where people interact with Web3 dApps and they have no idea they're on a blockchain. So yeah, what you said was actually the exact discussion we had internally. We call that cognitive load, right? It's like, oh, should I spend 3 cents to click a button? It's like, it's really prohibiting interaction. And we don't want that. We want it to be fluid. And so that's really cool that you kind of had the same thought process as we did when we were cooking this up. I guess as far as mana scarcity, mana, sorry, sick a little bit. Mana is, something necessary to throttle load on the network. And as Koinos grows in popularity, I think that, Mana will continue doing its job to regulate network traffic. And when it becomes maybe more scarce, then we will move into a different phase of the Koinos network where we'll focus on different things like scalability, and then we can open up even more resources to be spent per block. And it's really, we're throttling ourselves so we can grow in a controlled way. And so, mana probably won't, if mana becomes scarce, we'll be in a very successful position. It will be a good thing for all of us. That means our ecosystem has grown rapidly and widespread adoption has occurred. And we already have plans in place to, how we can grow further. And so I hope mana becomes scarce. We can make our next moves. I'm sure everyone will be very happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a good problem to solve.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. I mean, just what is economics? I always say, I don't know if this is the definition, but I would define economics as it's the systems and processes by which a civilization or a community decides how to allocate scarce resources. And there's no way around it. Even if we had every single computer in the entire world running Koinos, we would still have finite resources. They are still scarce. And so we have to figure out a way to allocate those scarce resources. Mana is the way that we're choosing to do that. And so, as Steve pointed out, if mana becomes, if it becomes expensive to run a contract, and mana becomes very either scarce or coin becomes very expensive, and say there's a decent barrier to entry for new dApp developers to get mana, there are several solutions for them. The first is, as Steve was saying, we enter into a new phase of Koinos, and we begin as Koinos Group and with the rest of the community focusing on scaling technologies, right? And I would say there's a whole bunch of things that encompasses, sharding is one of them, or creating new chains that Koinos can interact with, and that way we multiply the number of resources, but everybody can communicate. That's sort of one bucket of scaling. We also can look at continuing to optimize our SDKs. Not saying that we're not going to do that until that's we run into that, but further optimizing the SDKs, further optimizing the WASM VM so that it's more efficient. All of these things work to increase the resource pool that we have available, which then means mana can do more with the same amount of mana. All of those things play in, but also if mana becomes scarce, and say a large dApp is running inefficiently and they're just doing things in their contract that they don't need to do, or there are better ways of their contract getting the same outcome, then they're also financially incentivized to optimize their contract. They'll either need to purchase more coin to have more mana or optimize their contract. So we have multiple market forces at play, in addition just to us getting more resources. And I think all of those are a good thing. And if we had infinite amount of resources, coin would be worth nothing because it wouldn't get you anything. So I'd say all of us want there to be finite resources. That's the only way coin becomes a valuable utility token. But we already have sort of plans moving in the future. And I would echo what Steve and Nathan said, and that is if and when mana becomes scarce, that is the first marker that Koinos is successful. I think that's something for us to celebrate, but that doesn't mean that the work is over. I think the really hard work is just beginning at that point.
Very cool. All right, so we're coming up on 1 hour here, or we might actually be at an hour. So let's just let's hit a couple more questions and we'll wrap up here. There's one from Rob Hendricks. How many active nodes do you see today, and how many do you expect to see a year from now? So obviously we're on testnet, not mainnet yet, so we don't have a read on actual nodes, but any thoughts on what you expect, predictions? No, is a fine answer.
I think we've had as many as like 17 or 18 nodes up on the testnet.
Okay.
Does that go out right, Steve?
Yeah.
And in a year, like I would love to see 100 plus.
Cool.
Yeah,
I mean, just tossing out some numbers. That's what I'd love to see.
Let's get 1,000.
The
Excellent.
nodes are really easy to spin up. Throughout these testnets, I think I've spun up maybe like over 100 instances of nodes, and it's just takes minutes. And I highly encourage you, if you've got a computer at home and you want to try out running a node, it's very easy to do. I really encourage you guys to do it.
Excellent. I think we pretty much hit the bulk of the questions in the chat. I'm looking through. If we didn't get to yours, feel free to comment it again now. Otherwise, hit us up on Telegram or Discord, and we'll address it as much as we can. There is one here from PD Pepper. Just joining now. When you get to the questions, were there any updates on when mainnet? Feel free to disagree with me, but I believe the answer to this is no, not today, but soon. Okay.
Yep. I would say if you're wanting to know more about mainnet, just keep your eyes and ears open. Something might be said soon.
Okay. Super vague.
Go to Koinos.io and make sure you sign up for the newsletters. And honestly, the best placing information is just be a part of the community, be a part of Telegram and Discord. All of these guys are super active on there. And if you ever want to ask them questions, you can always tag them directly. And I guess, aside from when mainnet, the other big question, and you got to put it, is when moon?
After mainnet. That's when.
That's when we have it scheduled.
Okay.
It's scheduled. Don't worry, the moon is scheduled.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's just wrap it up there. There's a couple more questions about, say, the burn pool and decentralization there, but we'll let these guys get back to coding away on Koinos, and we'll hit those questions up on Telegram.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for joining the show. I'm sure everybody loved listening. We've actually held a solid number of viewers. So you guys are great having here. Congratulations on a successful snapshot. Very, very little drama there. And I hope you guys get to mainnet working soon. And we'll have you on shortly after that too.
Awesome.
Great, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.